This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. Good Erev Shabbos, the last Erev Shabbos of Tafshin Ayin Vav, and we're going to plow through a few extra psukim in Sefer Yona, and we learned last week that Yona was in trouble on two occasions. The first occasion was when he was thrown overboard. Obviously, he's thrown overboard, he's in the water, he's drowning, he has no air, and he's b'tzara, and he cries out to Hashem, and he's saved by the male fish. The male fish was roomy, it was comfortable, there was a lot of space there, and things were good. And as we know, when things are good, we are not as motivated to cry out to Hashem as when we're being choked. You know, one of the reasons why tzara occurs is so that we could be tzayek to Hashem, and we need to be tzayek to Hashem. Interesting, there's a famous machlekes, Rambam and the Ramban, about Tefilla. The Rambam holds the concept of Tefilla is d'oraisa, 3 times a day, and the precise nusach is rabbinically ordinated, but the concept of Tefilla is mid'oraisa, while the Ramban says no, Tefilla is rabbinic. However, Tefilla be'ez tzara is d'oraisa. Even the Ramban, who says that Tefilla is d'Rabbanan, Tefilla at a time of distress is d'oraisa. So Rav Soloveitchik would say, the Rambam agrees that Tefillah be'ez tzara is d'oraisa. That's why the Rambam says Tefillah every day is d'oraisa, because every day is an eis tzara. Every day, the vicissitudes that man endures in this world, and the challenges man endures, every day we are hanging on the kindness of Hashem, and every day is an eis tzara. Well, the first eis tzara for Yona was when he's thrown into the water. Then he's swallowed by the male, but he doesn't daven, so the male spits him out, as we'll see, into the depths of the sea. The first time he was just thrown into the ocean, now he's thrown into the depths of the sea, and now he's sort of at the bottom of the sea where the depths of the water are coming crashing down on him. And then finally he's swallowed by the female fish, and the female fish, it's also very cramped in there, but to say the least, it's a suffocating, stifling situation, and that is the third time Yona is in Sarah. And even though this parak speaks about the prayer of Yona, nevertheless, it's not just one long prayer, but a few psukim dedicated to each one of these 3 difficult matzavim that Yona is in. And the first one is when he was thrown into the sea. So we begin with Pasuk Gimel. Parak Beis, Pasuk Gimel. Bag. Parak Beis, Pasuk Gimel. Vayomer, Yona said, Karasi, I called out mitzarali, from my distress, El Hashem, to God. Vayanini, and he answered me. Mi beten sha'oil, from the belly of the pit. That's the belly of the daga. From the belly of the daga. Shiur shamata koili, you heard my voice. Now the Rambam writes a lashon that tza'aka is goyrem, to remove the tzara. And the reason for that is, the Archaim HaKadosh says in Parshas B'Shalach that a tzara comes so that we should cry out to Hashem. So of course, when we do cry out to Hashem, it wards off the tzara and it brings an end to the tzara. Okay, Pasuk Daled. V'atashlicheni metzula, you threw me into the depths, Bilvav Yamim, to the heart of the seas. V'nahar yisayviveni, with rivers encircling me. Kal mishbarecha, all of your breakers. Breakers are powerful waves. There's a famous mansion in Rhode Island called the Breakers.
Famous hotel in Miami.
Yeah, why? Because it's on the water, and it's constantly being hit by the waves. V'galecha, and your waves, alai avaru, pass over me. Says Rashi, Kal mishbarecha v'galecha, Kol nachshoilohi diyama, al shem shehanachsho meshaber mefarkes hayam. The winds, the stormy whirlwinds. See the Malbim on Pasuk Daled. So this refers to the first tzara. Maschal lefarish masher kasav. Remember, Pasuk Gimel began, Karasi mitzara li al Hashem vayaneni, mi beten sha'ol shivati shamata koili. That could actually be broken up into 2 parts. I called out to Hashem for my distress, that's A. And B is, mi beten sha'ol shivati shamata koili. Says the Malbim Maschal Lefaresh, it begins to explain Masha Kasav, that which it says, Karasi mitzara el Hashem. Shetchila hishlachta oisi mitzula b'vav yamim. First you threw me into the depths. Shehu masha shlichoisai min ha'ani alayam. That's a reference to being thrown off the boat into the sea. V'nahar yisayvaveni, with the rivers encircling me. Now why would you call, he wasn't traveling on a river, he was traveling on an ocean. Why the reference to the river? So the Malbim says, Shem Nahar ba el mayim hamoishchem. A river refers to flowing water. Umuvdo min hayam, separate from the sea. Shehamayim shabai oimdim v'nikvim. The water of the sea is stationary and gathered. Aval oz. But at that time, shehasa'ara, that the storm, sheheschayla labiyam, that was storming in the sea, hayam min hatahayim, was from the depths. Shemei hayam atzmai hisragishu. The waters of the sea itself were moved. V'nasu dachyam lamata, and it started to move everything down. Nikra Nahar, it was called a river. Ki az lo yamdu hamayim. At that point in time, the water was not stationary. Rak nimshechu be'igol. It was drawn in a circle, saviv atzmam, basically a whirlpool.
Well, that's the currents, especially when you have cold water that meets warm water, they get swirl. You have all kinds of serious movement of water.
So the water was swirling. V'savavuhu saviv savav, it encircled him round and round. V'az, then komish barech v'galech alay avaru shaloit saf ala galim. He wasn't floating on the waves like the story of Rabbi Akiva. Rak nafal ba'omek hayam. He fell to the dust. Makim shamayim shoytfim lamata, where the water was gushing down. V'agalim avru olav milmala, with the waves passing over his head. That was the first tzara. So Yona is now reliving the experience, being in the ocean, being in the sea, with waves passing over his head. What did he think at that point of time? What did he think would happen to him?
How did he survive in the water? I mean, we said that there was more oxygen or air in the water.
What was his attitude? So Pasuk says, Va'ani amarti, and I said, sometimes it could be referred to I thought, Nigrashti, I am being chased away, mineged einecha, from before your eyes. That God is throwing me away.
Oh, but you ran away first.
At this point of time, I'm being thrown from before your eyes. But when I saw, Rashi says, that you preserved me all these days, I knew, oisif lahabit, I will yet again gaze upon el heichal kodshecha, your holy heichal, your Beis Hamikdash. Yona figured all hope was lost. Yona thought God was rejecting him and he was dejected. However, when he saw that God was sustaining him, he realized he would yet again be saved and see the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Malbim Pasuk, V'ani amarti ratzaloymar, oz chashavti, then I thought, ki negrashti mineged einecha, that I was being chased from before you. Ach b'mashar ha'isi es hanes, but when I saw the miracle, shabala oisi hadog, that the fish swallowed me, v'nisharti b'chayim, and I remained alive. Ra'isi, I saw ki oidei necha v'hashgachasecha alai. In other words, Yona thought God's love for him was no longer, he didn't have hashgacha to him, but I see your hashgacha still upon me. Uvazeh yadati, and with this I know, ki oisif lahabed al heichal kodshecha, that I will yet again gaze upon your holy heichal.
And what did you think when he was thrown out of the dug?
So
the dug was like
we'll see. We'll have to see. We'll see. So that's the first section of the Tefilla. So the Tefilla is introduced in Pasuk Gimel. Pasuk Gimel has two parts. When I cried out to Hashem for my distress, and from the beten of the Sha'al I cried out to you. And then we begin with the first distress, Pasuk Dalet and Hey, talks about Yona being thrown into the water. Now we move on to the second distress, and like we mentioned, he was swallowed by the male fish, but then he was spat out. And again he's in the water, but when the force of the ejection propelled him even to the depths of the depths. So the Pasuk Vav. Afafuni mayim ad nefesh. Water surrounded me to my soul. Meaning, this sounds like he was much deeper in the water. Tehayim, the deep, Yisoyveveni, encircled me. Suf, the reeds, Chavush l'roishi, entrapped my head.
Well, if he was really down at the very depths, Rabbi,
yeah,
the reeds don't survive down there.
Let's see.
They need light.
Remember, we mentioned from Pirkei Rabbi Elazar that when Yona was in the fish sort of gave him a tour of the miracles and the wonders of the sea. So this reference to Suf refers specifically to the Yam Suf. Says Rashi, Suf Chavish L'Roshi, Yama de Suf, the Yam Suf, Tali Le'el Min Roshi, were suspended above my head. Shehereu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yam Suf, God showed him the sea of reeds. Ve'ech avru Yisrael b'soichai, and how Klal Yisrael crossed it. Shayu shtei einei hadaga, the two eyes of the fish, kamin shtei chaloinos, became like two windows. Umistakel v'roya kol ma shebayam, and he was able to look out and see.
Like in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, see out the windows of the submarine.
The eyes of the fish were like two great windows. And Yona was taken to where? He was taken to the Yam Suf. Let's see the Malbim. Afafuni. Achar kach.
Where were they? Where were they from Tarshish when he was thrown overboard? Wasn't he in the Yam Suf? No, it was the Mediterranean.
No, he was on the sea, and the sea. They were headed to Tarshish, but then he was ejected from the boat. Says the Malbim. Afafuni. Achar kach kishapalat hadog oisay shenis alayam. Afterwards, when the fish ejected him to the sea, az afafuni mayim ad nofesh. V'loy hamayim shebeshetach hayam kiv'tchila. Not like the water, not the water that was on the surface of the sea, like in the beginning. Rak tahoim yisaviveni. The first time he was just to the sort of the superficial level of the sea. Now he's in the deep. Ki hadog haya imay ba'oimek taham. The fish swam to the deep, to the oimek, to the depths. Ulasham hikeo, and that's where it spat him out to. V'yamsuf. And the Yam Suf, Shehu Hamayim Shalamalam and HaTahoim, which is the water above the Tahoim. In other words, when we say the Yam Suf was above his head, it doesn't mean, it was right here. It means way, way above. The Yam Suf was way above his head. Because the Mayim of the Yam Suf is the water above the Tahoim. The water above the Tahoim is called Suf. Ki Hadag Halicha Derech Yam Suf Shemisham Halicha Lenenvei Hayachavosh L'Roshi. So it doesn't mean the Yam Suf was growing out of his head, it just means it was well above his head. Now, there is an idea, and scientifically, there are mountain ranges under the sea,
Sure.
right? Some of the mountains under the sea
And big valleys too.
are taller than Mount Everest, right? So look at this pasuk. L'kitzvei harim yaradati, to the edges of the mountains I descended. Haaretz,
The top of the mountain.
to the edges. In other words, it sounds like he went under the mountains. Haaretz, the earth, bricheha badi. It was like bars against me. In other words, he went so deep that the earth, the underground mountains, were also above his head. He went below the lowest points of earth in the sea. So he mamish went kemat to Gehenna.
Maybe he went to the core of the earth.
He went under the earth. The earth was above him. Haaretz, the earth, bricheha, her bars, badi, were against me, li'olam. But what happened? Vatal mishachas chayai, Hashem laikai. And I went up. You brought up from the pit my life, Hashem, my God. Look at Rashi. Rashi says he went so deep, he went to Gehenna.
Core of the earth.
Rashi says, L'kitzei harim yaradati. L'soif midas haharim, to the edge of the measurement of the mountains. Hakavuim, that were set, al hatahaim, on the depths, yaradati, I went down. Ani amarti, I said, haaretz bricheha badi. The earth are like bars against me. Kenegdi lamala, opposite me above. Mimeni sagor, it locks me in. V'loy eitzei le'olam, and I'll never leave. Ba'adi, the word ba'adi, kamay v'sagarta hadal ba'adcha. Ba'adi doesn't mean on my account. It means like against me. Haaretz bricha ba'adi. Whenever it says ba'ad in the Torah, it means opposite, against. Now, how do you read these words? Haaretz bricheha ba'adi le'olam. The word le'olam, Rashi says, Musa v'amash amar l'mal. It's going back on what it said above. V'ani amarti nigrashti. I said I was cast away, and I said the earth are bars against me forever, but Vatal mishachas chayai. Aval kvar isi kan Gehenim. I already saw here Gehenim. By the way, Gehenim is not a good place. Umisham helisani, you brought me up from here. V'hineni, now, unbelievable. Yona actually traveled through, he saw many wonders. He saw the Yam Suf, he saw Gehenim, and
the mountains are below the sea.
The mountains below, right? And he said in Pasuk Hey, I will yet again countenance your holy temple. Well, Yona's last stop was under the Makayim HaMikdash. There's deep down under the Beis HaMikdash is water, and he was under the Makayim HaMikdash. He says, Umisham helisani, from Gehenim you brought me up, V'hineni ata keneged tachas ha'heichal sheb'Yerushalayim. And now you are opposite, and now I am opposite. The holy heichal in Yerushalayim, K'inyan shenemar, ach oisif lahabed al heichal kodshecha. Maybe this is certainly another reason why this is so appropriate to read on Yom Kippur. How everybody, no matter how low we sink, no matter how far deep in the underworld somebody may have descended, how close to Gehenna we may be, Yibam Shem could always bring us up to the point where we're standing in the Makam HaMikdash. So everyone, all of us, we have the opportunity to raise ourselves up with the help of Hashem. Somebody once told me, Rabbi Warman once told me, he heard from the Satmar Rebbe that, it's very hard for a person to do tshuva. After all, the Rebbeinu Shalom Yud Kei Vav Kei is Gematria 26. To climb all the way up there is very, very difficult. So what does Hashem do? Tashev Enosh Ad Daka. Daka is Gematria Dalid Chaf Aleph 25. God positions man at the 25th level. And he says, don't worry, Vatoimer Shuvu B'nei Adam. Now do tshuva. You don't have to go from 0 to 26. Tashev Enosh Ad Daka. He positions you at 25, and then he says, just take one step. Okay, so here Yona is, and interesting, the Tefilla of Yona, he davened where? He davened now at the Beis HaMikdash. So it's not, all of these miracles happened to him even before he davened. God rescued him.
But Hashem put him there, right? He didn't get there by himself. He would have no way of knowing where he was relative to what was so far above him.
Yeah, it sounds like God put him in the depths, and the fish spat him out in the depths, and here Yona is in the Gehenim, so to speak, and then the fish brings him up to the Makam HaMikdash, and it's at that point that he davens.
But the Dagah brought him there, no? The duck spit him out, Dagah must have brought him there.
Who brought him there?
Had to be the second fish, no? Because you already spit out.
Well, he was spit out to the depths, to the Gehenim.
Right,
now,
from the Gehenim, he went to the Makam HaHeichal.
How did he get there? Who gave him the ride? Was it the Dug or the Dagah?
It could have been the Dug. The Dug spit him out already, no? Otherwise, what did the Dagah do? I think she was the transport. Okay.
Let's see. Pasuk Ches. No, let's see the Malbim on Pasuk Zayin. Lekitzvei harim yoradati. Shahaya ba'omek hatahaim. He was in the depths of the deep. Shetachas harim ki harim mechasim alatem milmala. The mountains cover the abyss above. Ad sheha'aretz. To the point where the earth, hamechasas hatahaim, that covers the deep. Shetachas ha'aretz. Shama bricheha badi la'olam. Shalahia efsha shiyatza pnei amayim. I'll never float on the water. Achar sha'alav hoysa ha'aretz. Because the earth is above it. And even so, you brought up my life from the deep. I was swallowed by the female fish. She brought me up. And I was again saved. This is all an explanation of the first part of Pasuk Gimel of Karasi Mitzara Li El Hashem. Pasuk Ches. Now, Yona is in the female fish, and things are a bit very cramped inside the female fish. I don't know if he coughed like that. Could have been with a different tune. But things are not good. Behisatif alai nafshi. As my soul was fainting, as Hashem zacharti, I recalled Hashem.
Satef means fainting. Isn't that the same as Satef about tzitzis, where you wrap yourself around?
Yeah, but when the expression when we refer to the soul, the Mitzudat Sion says it's a lashon of atifa. When a person is in Sarah, he's sort of ungebogen, wrapped up in himself, like one end is wrapped in the other. But usually, the Ibn Ezra says it means behisativ kamoi ki ya'atev, fainting. Also, the Radak says that when a person is in tremendous Sarah, the person's nefesh is tiktzar, his breath is short. You feel like you're gonna faint. So, what happens? And this is a reference to inside the female fish when things were extremely cramped. B'atava yelecha tfilasi el heichal kodshecha, says the Malbim Besatif, Yifaresh Mashukasa mibeten sha'al shivati. This is an explanation of him calling out from the belly of the fish, a pasuk gimel. Kiata Besatif alaynav shishahir karev lamaves. He's close to death. B'meyadaga yidei doichek havladash meyela. All of the eggs are pressing against him. He remembered Hashem. Ata zacharti usvalal. I remembered to pray, to lashav b'tshuva, and to repent. Ul havtiach, and to promise ki amali dvar Hashem. Finally, Yona commits that he will fulfill God's bidding and go to the city of Nineveh and tell them to do tshuva. V'atavoy elecha tfilasi el heichal kodshecha. And my tefillah came to you from your holy temple, which again is a reference to that which.
From is L to your, right? But
El.
That fits in with what we said.
To, right. El heichal kodshecha. Now, all tefillos are go to the holy temple.
But he was right there, right? He was right beneath it.
But here, like we saw in Rashi earlier, it was not just that it was directed to the holy temple, but it was actually davening at the holy temple. And that's what the Malbim says, Shahoy b'tahayim shetachas Har Tzion. He was in the deep waters under Har Tzion. Now, I'm sure that many of us have davened at the Kaisel in our lifetimes, and maybe we've even gone to the Muslim quarter. There's actually a part of the western wall in the Muslim quarter, which is even closer to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. I once davened over there.
Well, you can go underneath the tunnel.
And you could even daven by the tunnels.
They have a place that said this is the closest.
But I don't think even you have ever made it to the abyss of water under the Har HaBayis. So look, I would put that on the itinerary. Yeah?
Bucket list.
Sha'alav oimed habeis hamikdash al zeh amar lekitzvei harim yaradati. I went to the edges of the mountains v'shamata tfilasi mehechal hakodesh. Okay. So now these are the three parts of Yona's tefillah. The next pasuk is quite interesting. The next pasuk says like this: Meshamrim havlei shav, chazdam ya'azovu. Those who keep empty vanities, their kindness they forsake. Was meant us? Those who preserve empty vanities, they forsake their kindness. Doesn't mean they forsake God's kindness, their own kindness. So I believe there are many interpretations. Rashi says as follows: Meshamrim havlei shav, those who guard and observe emptiness. Who observes emptiness? Oivdei avodah zara, they observe emptiness. Oisan sha'ovdim la'akum, those who observe. Right. Chastam yazoivu, they forsake God's kindness. What does that mean? Yiras HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the fear of God. Shekal chazdam v'toivasam me'itai, their kindness and their goodness me'itai yazoivu.
Whose kindness? It's chazdam, it's their own kindness, no? Not HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kindness.
Rashi learns like this: Yiras HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, they forsake the fear of God. Chazdam, all of their kindness that comes from you. The word chazdam refers to all of the kindness that they have which comes from you. Chasdam is another way of saying you Hashem, Ya'azavu, they forsake you. But instead of saying they forsake you, it means they forsake their own kindness. Their own kindness is sort of a code word to the source of their kindness, to God. But and Pasuk Yud is then a continuation. But not I, says Yona. Va'ani b'kol toida. But I, in a voice of thanksgiving, ezbechalach, I sacrifice to you. Asher nadarti, my vows, ashalem, I will repay them. Yeshua asal Hashem. We'll see what this means like this. So according to Rashi, the first part of the pasuk is the Oivdei Avodah Zarah, the Meshamrim Havlei Shav Chasdam, the source of their kindness, which is God, Ya'azav, they forsake you. In other words, Oivdei Avodah Zarah never recognize you, but not me. I will show you gratitude for your salvation. I will bring you sacrifices, and that which I vow I will fulfill, meaning I will go to Nineveh, Yeshua Sal Hashem. And according to Rashi, he's going to read it, because of the salvation which was coming from Hashem. Look at Rashi. Avalani eini kain, I'm not like them. Elo b'kol toida, with a voice of thanksgiving, ez v'chalach. Kach tergem Yonasan. This is how Yonasan in the Targum translates the pasuk. But the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer has a different translation. What happened to those 70 men who were on the ship from the 70 Umay Sa'ilam? They converted. Mishamrim Havlei Shav. Those who preserved emptiness, who used to worship idols. Chasdam. Those, the source where they thought their kindness came from, Ya'azoivu. They forsake them. Okay. And what do? They convert. Yeshua Sal Hashem. Nidrei Shlamim. Sacrifices of Shlamim, V'toida, Ashalem, I will pay L'Shem Yeshuas Ashal Hashem, for the salvations which came from Hashem. Yeshuasa, the word Yeshuasa, Kamay Lishuasa, or V'chein Kuma Ezra Salanu, get up to help us. So it means Ashalema Lishuasa Hashem, because of the salvations of Hashem. Let's see how the Radak translates this pasuk. He translates Mishamrim. Now that he accepted upon himself to go to Nineveh and to rebuke them, he says consolation to Hashem, to himself. Interesting. Mishamrim Havlei Shav, the men of Nineveh who preserved emptiness and believed in Avodah Zarah. In other words, why didn't he want to go to Nineveh? Because he didn't want them to do tshuva, because it would look bad for Klal Yisrael. So he's now consoling himself. They're not going to do tshuva anyway. Mishamrim Havlei Shav, those who observed Avodah Zarah, Chastam Yazoivu. You think they'll just forsake it? They won't really forsake it, and therefore they'll be liable to be destroyed anyway. So it's okay if I go to them and tell them to do tshuva. It's not going to work.
If Hashem tells him to go there, doesn't he realize that it's likely that they're going to do tshuva? Otherwise, Hashem wouldn't send them there. Waste of time.
Well, maybe, Hashem's giving them the opportunity, but he's sort of consoling himself. I could go because anyway it's not going to do anything. Yeah. Now, let us see the Malbim here. The Malbim also... Oh, excuse me, that's how the Malbim teaches the pasuk. The Malbim, that beautiful pshat of the Malbim. Excuse me, that's the pshat of the Malbim. They're not going to leave their ways, and therefore va'ani, therefore I, v'lachein ezvach lach v'kol toida, I will sacrifice to you in a voice of thanksgiving. Ki arba tzrichim l'hoidos. Of course, we know there are 4 people who have to show gratitude to God, and one of them is someone who travels through the sea, Yardei Hayam. But Saloimer avi zevach toida, I will bring a sacrifice of thanksgiving. V'oida l'cha chastech, and I will thank you for your kindness. V'gam asher nadarti ashalema.
Where did he make a neder? Till now, the nadarti means I made a neder, so now I'm going to have to...
Apparently, the neder, which was the neder? The neder is he made a neder to go to Nineveh, lo lechas al Nineveh. Doesn't say that he made it, but we see from here he must have. Umasha yaresi, that which I'm afraid, that if Melech Ashur does tshuva, Yagiu Rois Yisrael, I'm afraid bad will happen to Klal Yisrael because they'll be compared to the Goyim. That's why Shilchin Mana Esat Melechus Kanal. That's why he refrained from going in the first instance. Yeshua Sal Hashem. Akave, I hope, Shahashem Yoshia Es Yisrael, that God will save Klal Yisrael Mikal Tzaroisam from all of their troubles. In other words, the Malbim reads the pasuk also. Always has an ingenious way to read the pasuk. Rashi read it, I'm going to pay back my vows, Yeshua Sal Hashem, because of God's salvation. The Malbim reads it, I'm going to go to Nineveh because I vowed to. But I'm afraid that this will bring bad to Klal Yisrael. No, Yeshua Sal Hashem, I place my trust in God that nothing bad will come out of what I'm doing. Right. It's as if it says, and I place I put my hope in Hashem. The Metzudas David says that it refers to the fishermen who converted. Yona was saying, I am confident, Chazdam Ya'azoivu. They may have converted, but ultimately they'll probably go back to their bad ways. As opposed to me, I will commit to my Kabbalah. Pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayomer Hashem Ladog. So God speaks to the fish. That's interesting.
Why says Vayomer instead of Vayitzav Hashem es a dog? Why didn't it to speak him? He's Vayitzav Hashem es a dog. Spit him out. Vayomer? And Vayomer is also a lashon of rock. I mean, softness, right? It's supposed to be Vayidaber.
Fish generally are very obedient. You don't have to speak to them harshly. You ever try?
Yeah. They don't listen.
They don't listen. When Hashem speaks,
come up to the top of the tank, they don't listen.
Vayomer Hashem Ladog. God said to the fish, Vayake es Yona el hayabasha, and he vomited Yona
so it doesn't say
out to the dry land.
Right?
Doesn't say.
You can infer what he said by what happened after.
Well, maybe what he said to the dog so disgusted the dog that the dog spit out Yona. Maybe he said something negative about Yona.
He said, hey.
One of these negative political ads.
No, he said, Nevi'im aren't kosher, get rid of them.
Well, let's see the Malbim. The Malbim, of course, learns that Hashem did not literally speak to fish. Hashem does not speak to fish. Instead, Vayomer Hashem Ladog, Heyeres Ruach Hadog. He engendered the spirit of the fish, Sheyelech Ima Osasayam, to take him to the edge of the sea, V'yikiyenu al Yebasha, and propel him to the dry land. Now we have a Messiah. The Pirkei Rav Elazar says the fish spat him out 965 parsa. Now that's 965 parsa is about 4,000 miles. A little bit less, about 3,900 miles.
Spit him out with a lot of force.
So now that's very far. If he was,
it's far enough.
It could be that the trajectory maybe he was up. Now Baruch Hashem, Yona did not bang his head on anything too hard. That must have been another miracle. That
a very hard landing.
Yeah, but the Malbim says, how do we know 965 parsa? So if you look at the words and you count up the gematria of Lashem, Vayomer, Hashem, Ladog, Vayake, Es Yona, 965. Amazing. The gematria of Lashem, Vayomer, Hashem, Ladog, Vayake, Es Yona, 965. Well, you would think that this time, after experiencing all of those wondrous experiences, this time Yona is going to go to Nineveh. Vayihi devar Hashem el Yona shenis leimar. So God spoke to Yona a second time, saying, now the first time he said, Kom lech al Nineveh, ukra eleha, call out to it. What should he call out to it? Nothing, it doesn't say. Here he says, Kala ukra eleha es hakriya asher anochi doiver elecha. Call out the calling that I will speak to you. Says Rashi, says the Malbim. Vayhi devar Hashem el Yona shenis, harab Yitzchak Abarbanel kasav. The Abarbanel says, and infers from the fact that it says a second time, He spoke to him a second time, not a third time. This is mukhrach from what we say in Seder Olam. Yona was the one who anointed Yehu b'shnas Gimel Aleph Sama Beis Librias Olam in the year 3062 from the creation of the world. V'chaya ad Zechariah Shemalach Kuf Kuf Samach Daled. He basically lived 202 years. Harei Chaya, that means he lived Meyam Shehiskal Lehisnabas, from the day that he began to prophecy. Meya Ushtayim Shana. 202 years. We don't find any other prophecies throughout this time. Except for the two prophecies that he prophesied on Ninveh. From here we see that Nevuah must have ceased from Yona, because from the time he began to prophecy until Zechariah became the king, we're 202 years, we don't find any other prophecies. And really this is appropriate that it happened to Yona, that he wasn't able to prophesy anymore, because he sort of was disgusted with prophecy. He didn't want to fulfill God's bidding. But it's really a wonder. Why? Abarbanel contradicts himself. That he writes after this B'samach that the nevuah of Yona on Ninveh was 6 years before the Churban. Shomron yeah. The nevuah on Ninveh was 6 years before the Churban in the times of Hoshea. That must be he prophesied another 10 years.
Right? The only nevuahs we see are these nevuahs.
Yeah, but Barbanel says that the last one that means the Barbanel begins by saying that he only spoke to Yona twice. He anointed Yehu, and then he lived until Zechariah reigned. And we don't find during this time only two prophecies on Ninveh. But here's the problem. Why? Because if the Barbanel says that he prophesied 6 years before the Churban, that means that's after the time of Zechariah. That means he must have prophesied 10 years in the times of Menachem, 2 years b'mei Pekachia, 20 years b'mei Pekach, and 3 of Hoshea. So that means another 137 years. And also the prophecy of Ninveh was at the end of his life. How can we prove from the fact that God did not speak to him before this occasion that God is for sure going to take away the prophecy from him? But he hadn't yet refused the shlichus.
Rabbi, is Yona ben Amitai mentioned in any of the other Sefer?
Yeah, it's mentioned in Malachim. So,
but it's not mentioned. There's no nevuah mentioned there, just his name.
It's mentioned that the prophecy that Hoshea, that one of the kings will restore the Jewish borders, that Yeravam would restore the Jewish borders, it's mentioned like Hashem prophesied to Yona. That means, let's read this and we'll delve into Mitzvah Hashem next time. Another question is, Sefer Nachum Kasav Sharbam Shanim Oisezman Shaniva Yona, that 40 years from the time that Yona prophesied, Haya Churban Shomron, was the destruction of Shomron. V'oid Yischaber was Shmonim Shana, and if you add another 80 years, Haya Churban Ninveh. And that's a stira to what the that's what he says, that the Nevuah of Yona was 6 years before the Chorban. So there seems to be a number of details which are hard to reconcile and coincide, and Mitzvah Hashem will discuss it more next time. Okay? Shkoyach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.